It's that time of year again. Isn't that right?
Yep.
We gotta bring in the firewood in the garage.
We gotta make fire.
Gotta close the pool next week. Should have done that a month ago. But that's not why you guys are here. You guys are here to learn about my 10 biggest mistakes building this gazebo. My first biggest mistake was not getting clear information from the city. They should have given me every little detail about building a gazebo. They should have told me that rule that would make them deny my gazebo build. To get it approved, I had to pay 600 bucks, take some pictures of the different angles around the property, just to prove to them that it wouldn't be blocking any visibility from any drivers. Mistake number 2 was not realizing where the posts were gonna land on. 2 years ago, I got a big ash tree removed. It was completely dead. And I also got the stump removed, so I couldn't see where the tree used to be, but I could have easily went back to some pictures. How was I supposed to know that in the future, I could have maybe used that tree trunk instead of a post for the gazebo? That would have been really original. What's mistake number 3? Let's get this fire going. Mistake number 3 is not having sanded and stained everything on the ground when I received the wood. That was maybe not when I received the wood, but at least after chiseling out all the mortises and tenons. I just wasn't in that mindset. Because I'm not a contractor and I don't do this every day, I was really trying to just see progress. I didn't know what stain to get. I didn't really, taking a pause, going to figure that out and then doing it right. I really just kind of like go, go, go. Get it done, get the posts up, get the beams up, get the rafters up, and then after, what's the color? Should I sand it? Should I leave it roughs on? If I could go back or let someone know, figure out your stain before you even start. Go to Home Depot with the wood you bought, try some stains out. That's what I did, but I did it late. That would have saved me a lot of time. I think mistake number 4 is not having braced the back posts to the front posts when I was pouring the concrete. I was so focused on getting them perfectly level at the tops. The 2 beams weren't exactly parallel, so I had 2 inches difference on this side of the beam here. I only found that out when I cut my second rafter. I cut out my first rafter, then on my second rafter, I cloned it. I found out that rafter had a huge gap on the backside, so that wasn't cool. It was a very hard week or 2, I think. Once again, remember, this was really just like a part-time hobby kind of build throughout the summer. So if I could go back, I would make sure to brace the front posts to the back posts and make sure that at the tops, the beams are gonna be perfectly parallel. I would not do that mistake twice, that's for sure. Mistake number 5 is kind of the initial reason, the cause of mistake number 4. My holes weren't wide enough. I had 2 massive boulders on this one here, on this hole. Instead of making the hole bigger, getting a jackhammer to bust the boulder to make my hole wider, I ended up just saying like, you know what, it's fine. And I mean, looking back, I know it wasn't fine because I was off by about ½ an inch, but that little difference at the bottom made a pretty big difference at the top. So if you are gonna do it like me and bury your posts, you should definitely take the time to make the holes wide. This fire is beautiful. So for mistake number 6, it's the rafters, but not the issue about the bird's mouths not being all equal. So the rafters I ended up lifting by myself. They were really heavy. I wouldn't recommend doing it alone. I didn't really have another option. They weighed about 120 pounds, 55 kilos about. So yeah, those rafters were massive, and I had to take them up, mark them, bring them down, cut them, bring them back up, put them into place. I had to sand them and stain them in place. Sanding just one rafter for an hour and then staining it for, I don't know. But the big mistake here is not having planed them on the ground earlier. But you know what? If I wasn't so drained physically and mentally, I probably wouldn't have came up with that solution of walking the planer. Thanks for all those awesome comments I got about that. I didn't realize until after posting the video and receiving all those comments, this was like a creative way to use the planer. I'm sure I didn't invent it. What's that saying? Desperate times calls for desperate needs, something like that. I was drained physically, I was drained mentally. Those rafters were a true beating. It's cold outside. Hey Alexa, what's the temperature in Fahrenheit?
Right now, it's 37 degrees Fahrenheit.
There you go. Now you know. Mistake number 7 was totally my fault. I guess you could say it's just because I'm an absolute noob. It was the first time ordering from a sawmill, so I didn't really know what they would give me. I thought that they would give me nice finishing wood, really. Like, I thought it was clean, nice edges. That's not the case. So what I learned is that if you order lumber and in that stack you order 1x material, a lot of that 1x material is gonna come from the edges of the tree. All my 1x material had tree bark on the edges, had a lot of knots. It just wasn't what I wanted. I wanted finishing lumber. And I was only able to complete about 60 or 70% of the roof. That's when I realized I had to go back to the sawmill and order more thin boards. So that's what I did. I had to go get the wood, rip it down, plane it, let it dry for about a few days before I could sand it and stain it. All these mistakes just added me more days, you know, maybe even more weeks to the entire project. That's why I'm making this video. If I could help you guys build it in way less time with less headaches, that's my goal. This fire is nice. If you guys want to build this and you're curious about even more tips and tricks or learnings, or you really want to see the little details on a plan, I have everything available on Etsy. I'll leave a link in the description below. So if you do want to build something like this, consider supporting the channel. Mistake number 8. This one is a silly one. I placed my first polycarbonate sheet in the middle and I aligned it to the rafters. I clamped it, I marked it, and I started cutting over the center of the rafter. But then I realized after cutting that on the other side, I also had to cut, and I noticed that it wasn't even perfectly parallel to each other. So now I cut the first polycarbonate sheet on both sides instead of just lining it up on one perfectly, only one side to cut. And then later on, I realized that an absolute nightmare, the H channel or the H profile that I put between the two sheets was extremely hard to put. You need to spray it with water and soap, and it was almost impossible to get it through. Like for the second one, it was so impossible, I had to engineer something with my brother to clamp it down on a piece of wood, and then I'd have to hammer it in, and that was the only way to get it in, and it was like going in, you know, half an inch at a time, not even. That was an absolute pain. Mistake number 9. Not finishing with the polycarbonate roofing. I ended up not completing the third panel on the roof. I only drilled it in enough to hold it in place, but with work and other, you know, life situations, I couldn't work on it. So I took a pause on the gazebo for about a week. Little did I know there was a storm coming. Tornado warnings. This for Ottawa, Montreal, it's not very common. That was a mistake, not going, knowing that in a couple of days there might be a big storm. The third polycarbonate sheet, I left it only screwed, I think with 4 or 5 screws instead of screwing it all around. I had to run out during the storm. The sheet was folded in half on itself. Luckily, I was able to rescue that polycarbonate sheet. I added some more screws, which is something I should have done from the get-go. I should have added some screws all around because really the edges are the important part. Another thing that happened is the wind really blew from underneath and it unbuckled the polycarbonate sheets from the H channel I had put, and that was a real pain to deal with again. But what I ended up doing was not only adding more screws all around the perimeter, but also adding screws on the H channel to hold it down. That should technically never happen again. So I'm kind of happy that that happened during the build instead of a year from now or like in winter. I'm just happy that the polycarbonate sheet didn't crack. Please guys, if you saw in the video some other mistakes or things that I could have improved, please let me know in the comments. For me, mistake number 10 was, why in the world did I not put the wood pegs all in at the same time as I finished the joinery? As soon as I put the beams down onto the posts, I should have went and drilled through the tenons to at least have the holes. What ended up happening is, you know, I completed the gazebo, I completed the flooring, and then I think it had passed maybe a few months. I get up on the ladder and I'm realizing, crap, there's 2-3 millimeter gap, 1/8 of an inch, between the post and the beam on this post here. It's a little detail that I would have installed the wood pegs earlier if I would have known about it. So for me, at least, in my next timber frame build I'm gonna do, I'm 100% gonna be installing the wood pegs at the right time. I don't know what was going through my head, but mistake number 11 was not cutting the beams on the ground. I think I was scared of not having the beams perfectly square. So I ended up leaving the beams overhanging, but I probably should have just cut everything on the ground. And because I left that clip in the video, I got a lot of comments. Wear your eye protection. If you've stuck around till the end, thanks.